The death of the old Saudi made Ifat Khan the richest woman in India. She was entitled to a bank balance of over 400 crores of rupees. She also automatically inherited all his property in Saudi Arabia, Iran, and Eritrea. Nevertheless, Ifat knew nothing about her huge largesse, nor was she likely to know. She had merely exchanged hands from one evil master to another, albeit at first glance, the latter being a bit more civilized than the first. Her destiny took her from one follower of Mahound to another devotee of Mahound. In the beginning, she thought that her new Indian master was less evil than her Arab master. However, as soon as she agreed to marry and sleep with Mahmud Khan, she discovered that the old Saudi master was much less cruel than the new one. The greatest Bollywood film director turned out to be a sadist who enjoyed sexual intercourse by beating and torturing his sexual partner. The more his female sex partner felt pain and suffered, the more he enjoyed the sex. He tortured her by slapping her cheeks, smacking her buttocks, biting her shoulders, squeezing her breasts and biting her nipples and whipping her on her back. His cruel beatings turned Ifat's life into a living hell. She hated him with a passion. If she could have, she would have killed him over and over again for all the pain he subjected her to. Ifat had never thought of killing herself before until she began having sexual intercourse with him. She tried several times to kill herself, but she always failed. She didn't have the slightest idea how to do it effectively. Her cries and screams from the unbearable pain did not go unnoticed by the people around her. The many servants and others working in the household of Mahmud Khan heard her crying, screaming, and shouting for help every day. However, since they knew that that was the way their master enjoyed sex with the young girls he brought to his farmhouse before, none of them objected or tried to intervene to save the young film actress. They whispered to each other that since the girl agreed to it, why should they bother? They noticed the only difference between the previous guests and the present one, was the duration she held their master's interest. The other girls at the most, did not stay more than a few weeks or a few months, depending on the jobs they were offered in his films. But, this new girl had been a guest for many months, and no one knew when or if she was going to leave and return to wherever she had come from. The one thing about this new girl was that she stuck out like a sore thumb and that she was able to win the favor of the most famous film director in India, despite being illiterate. The servants found it hard to believe that such a young and beautiful Indian girl had never been to school in all her life. She did not look like the poor girl that claimed to have been picked up from the slums or the streets of Mumbai. She looked very healthy, and that assured them she used to live in a luxurious home before she had come to the farmhouse. Mahmud Khan was planning to keep Ifat Khan in his farmhouse forever. He did not want the outside world to see her or to know about her. He just wanted to use her to satiate his deviant sexual needs. This came to an abrupt halt one day, with a single phone call he received. The caller left a message on his cell phone implying that he knew all about the girl he was keeping at his farmhouse. He claimed to have videos of him beating, torturing, and raping her every day. To convince Mahmud Khan, he said that he would mail a copy of one of the videos to his farmhouse address. He was advised that upon receipt of the video, he was to watch it and then decide between having them go public or paying 10 crores of rupees to close this uncomfortable chapter in his life. The renowned Bollywood film director knew a public scandal of this degree would be the final nail in his coffin and sound a death bell on his illustrious career, not to mention he might go to jail. Faced with the choices offered by the blackmailer, he realized his only option was to fulfill the demands of the unknown extortioner and trust him to keep his word. He knew from the confidence of the caller and the way he spoke, that he had indeed come into possession of some illicit tapes of him and his captive victim. What troubled Mahmud Khan the most was, how did the caller manage to sneak inside his secure farmhouse and shoot his sex sessions? After he had blackmailed Ifat for marriage and sex, he had removed all the secret surveillance cameras that he had installed to spy on her. He was adamant about restricting access to Ifat's bedroom whenever he was in the bedroom with her, and he locked the wide doors. He doubted any of his servants would have the resources or guts to spy on him, nor did he believe they had the brains or know how to leverage the situation to outsmart him. This was not his first time around the block. He knew what he was doing. His modus operandi had never varied with any of his victims. Some of them were even younger than Ifat, yet nothing like this had ever happened before. No one had ever objected to the underage girls he had seduced into his bed chamber. In the past, he slept with a 9-year-old girl who was supplied to him by a Muslim pimp from Grand Road without any of his servants objecting or reporting him to the law enforcement. That child was bought from her parents at Aligarh city through the Islamic marriage of female children and brought to Mumbai. Then, her Muslim husband sold her to the Muslim pimp at Grand Road. The pimp resold her to the Bollywood pedophile, Mahmud Khan. Unfortunately, that poor child could not survive the torture of child rape and died within 3 days from the time that wicked man began to rape her. She was buried inside his farm prison and her sad story was buried with her. No servant had ever breathed a word to the police, nor had they tried to blackmail their evil master. Therefore, he concluded that his nemesis must then be an intruder. Mahmud Khan wasn't too worried about the amount of money that the blackmailer had asked for. He was phobic about the very real possibility that his blackmailer might continue to blackmail him, indefinitely. With no guarantee of a permanent solution, and with the possibility of losing crores and crores of rupees, he decided to figure a way to get out of the mess he created for himself, and get the videos back from his blackmailer and silence him forever. If he could determine the blackmailer's location, it would be a simple matter to get his men to neutralize him and retrieve all the videos in question. However, he could not trace the call. His blackmailer had placed the call from a public phone in Mumbai. That night, Mahmud could not sleep until he filled his big stomach with many bottles of Kingfisher beers. Understandably, that night was the only night he allowed Ifat to sleep, unmolested, since the day she had yielded to his blackmail and agreed to marry him. When Mahmud Khan awoke the following day, he found that the postman had already delivered the mail. As promised, the video arrived amongst his regular mail. He went to his private office and inserted the video cassette. What greeted his eyes was incredible. The footage was sharply focused, as if shot by a professional. This particular tape was shot while he held a whip in his right hand and flogged Ifat on her back and buttocks while she was naked with vivid footage of red and swollen bruises on her body. The audio of the footage showed him biting into her shoulder and her crying out in pain. He continued biting her viciously and she screamed even louder. He watched as the footage showed him releasing his bite and reaching around with his left hand to maul her breast. Ifat's screams reached a crescendo and her body spasmodically jerked when he twisted her nipple. He watched as he dropped his whip and began to slap Ifat in her face, striking her by her ear. She pulled away from him and he reined her back in with a violent and sustained yank of her long hair. The tape showed Ifat yielding to the pull and screaming for help. His image on the screen showed a laughing man, driven by her cries and pain, standing in front of her with a full erection. Ifat looked defeated without a shred of clothing to cover her delicate young body. The following scene showed him sodomizing the 18-year-old girl. He was neither gentle nor showed any restraint. After a few minutes, Mahmud Khan could not believe that the old man who was holding the young girl and beating and raping her was him. He simply did not see himself as a sadist until confronted with a third perspective. He felt as if an evil spirit had possessed his soul and led him to do things no rational human being would ever do to another person. If he had a gun in his hand, he would have emptied the magazine of bullets into the screen. Faced with the abject reality of what he had become, he felt miserable and wished the earth would open up and swallow him whole. The greatest Bollywood film director knew that if the video reached the police, he would go behind bars for the rest of his life. His great career in Bollywood would go up in smoke, and he would never be able to show his face in public again. He would probably be rejected and disowned by his own wife and son. Thus, he decided to do whatever he could in order to stop the blackmailer from sending the videos to the police and the media. His first reaction was to figure out a way to get rid of all the incriminating evidence. In his disturbed mind, Ifit's presence had now become a huge liability. Thinking that, he then believed that the only way to dispose of her was to murder her and bury her body somewhere on his farm. Working out various murder scenarios in his head, he realized that this would not change anything, as this would hardly deter his blackmailer. The fact that he was definitely under surveillance by the blackmailer might mean that his demands would probably escalate, if he should ever obtain evidence linking him to murder. Mahmud Khan decided that the best way to neutralize Ifit as a threat, would be to make her a public figure. He would take her out of hiding and show her to the public. He simply needed to give her a leading role in his new upcoming movie. He knew that he could still blackmail her and force her to act in his film. The shooting of his latest movie had just commenced and he decided to cancel the contract he made with his current heroine, and replace her with Ifit Khan. This meant that Mahmud Khan would have to go ahead and pay the 10 crores to the blackmailer and hope that he would act cautiously before attempting another blackmail scheme. If the blackmailer stipulated payment anywhere in India, he knew he could get his money back and have the blackmailer killed. His mood began to lift, but alas, this was not to be. His next call from the blackmailer stipulated a foreign account at the International Bank of Abu Dhabi. His instructions to Mahmud were clear. He had a week to deposit the ransom, failing which, copies of his exploits would be sent to the police, Stink News TV, and his wife and son. Mahmud Khan had a Muslim wife and a 29-year-old son who, more than anything, wanted a role as a hero in his father's movies but never got one because he was simply ugly, short, and fat. The blackmailer promised that as soon as the money arrived in his account, Mahmud would receive all the videos in the mail. Eager to get closure, Mahmud Khan asked the blackmailer for a guarantee that he would not ask for more money. The blackmailer simply gave him his word. Mahmud Khan left no stone unturned in his attempt to find out who his blackmailer was, and how he managed to sneak inside his bedroom and videotape him while he was having sex with his second wife. He talked to his security guards and questioned all his servants. He could not find any clues to lead him to the person who managed to penetrate his many armed security personnel and guard dogs. He had 4 trained and extremely dangerous German Shepherd dogs, each one being as big as a lion. The 4 dogs were starved purposely during the day and set loose at night on the grounds. Besides the guard dogs, he had 5 gunmen securing the farmhouse. When all his investigations were done and he was no closer to finding out who the perpetrator was, Mahmud resigned himself to the fact that he was going to be 10 crores poorer. He called the Abu Dhabi International Bank and tried to find out the name of the account holder, but he was told in no uncertain terms, that the information he requested was confidential. With nothing left to do, Mahmud Khan went to the State Bank of India to effect the ransom payment.